So today, as I said, we are joined by Matt, Jess and Earl from the Birmingham Solihull Mental Health Foundation team Liaison and Diversion service. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. And we'll start with our first question, which is very simply, what is the service designed to do?
So morning, everybody. I suppose if I start, guys, and then just jump in if I've missed anything, is that okay?
Yeah.
So my name's Jess. I'm one of the senior practitioners over at the Liaison and Diversion service. And I suppose the Liaison and Diversion service in a nutshell was implemented following the Lord Bradley report. So the aim of the service is to identify individuals that are entering into the criminal justice system that have multiple or a range of vulnerabilities. To identify those individuals and then put in appropriate support to help them progress through the criminal justice system where appropriate, or to be diverted if required. So when we're talking about vulnerabilities, although we're employed through a mental health trust, those vulnerabilities extend to mental health, learning disability, veterans, juveniles, drug and alcohol, homelessness. So we cover a lot of different areas, really. Matt, Earl, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add in.
No.
No, I think you've covered in a broad concept what we're about and what we do.
Just to add in as well, guys, just because Earl is joining us from the prison pathway as well. So currently we are based in HMP Birmingham. So we have a prison liaison service as well that is part of Liaison and Diversion. So that focuses on supporting individuals with short-term sentences. So people that are finding themselves kind of in and out of prison for short-term sentences. So we can support at gate release and community to make sure that there's community provisions put in place.
I think sorry. Sorry, Matt. I think one thing to add on to the fact that I'm employed within the prison team is also the trust and liaison diversion have employed people like myself who've got lived experience to work within the prison as well to help try and break down some of those barriers and get some identification and some rapport building with the lads that we get to work with.
And we found that that's worked really well, haven't we, across the whole kind of service about engagement rates, that individuals with lived experience can bring a different dimension to the support that we offer and really help kind of build that initial rapport and that trust with individuals.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. Question number 2. Well, the question is, what is the service referral criteria? But I guess more applicable is, how do clients access your services for you guys?
Yeah, so like I said, we are based kind of within all areas of the criminal justice system. So we're based in police custody, we're based in police custody, and then also the Birmingham court, so magistrates and Crown Court. And we have a community team as well. I'm based in HMP Birmingham. So where we get referrals from will vary in terms of which area people are finding themselves. But predominantly we get referrals from police, judicial services, solicitors, self-referrals, probation. So kind of professionals from every element of the criminal justice system, but also family and friends. So sometimes in custody we will have family have identified concerns about an individual's mental health, and then they're referred over to ourselves.
And I would just probably add on for the prison team as well. We do receive referrals from our custody, the police custody team, the courts team, and then the services, the mental health teams, health professionals within the prison and resettlement teams within the prison can refer over to us.
Yeah.
Just because you guys don't work in the normal way that some of the services in No Wrong Door. So if someone has a client who is, within the criminal justice system, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so if you're working with someone and that individual has been arrested, you can contact either our outreach team who will get in touch with the custody practitioners, or we have got a team mobile that you can call us, and you can kind of highlight those individuals to us.
Fantastic.
Which we can always drop those details to yourself after to be shared if you'd like.
If you could do, yeah, that would be brilliant. And also, if one of you could, wouldn't mind just popping them in the chat window of the Zoom now, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure that out.
While we ask question number 3, while Jess is occupied, how long is support provided for?
Well, that's does depend on quite a lot of factors, really, Alice. It depends on sometimes got to think around people's needs and when they're met. So it can be really anywhere between, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks if people's needs aren't so great. This is working with people in the community following custody, up to around 6 months for people who have got, you know, a number of serious multiple vulnerabilities and may not have been able to sort of work with or conventional services or conventionally with services in the past. Those are very flexible as well. All throughout my time with Liaison and Diversion, where we used to have a caseload meeting on a Monday, or we see the seniors, there's really making a case for the client to stay on longer. And sometimes engagement can take a long time in itself. We're not a service that will say, oh well, we went 2 times, or we sent these letters. You know, we have to do something around that at some point with people who we might not be in contact with. But if we get any encouragement at all off family members or even the person themselves that they might want to engage, but they're not quite engaging yet, we'll often keep it going. So really the answer, in the community, I guess, is between 6 to 8 weeks to 6 months, but we've had people who have gone over a year with us, who we've kept going.
Of course, yeah. With a lot of these things, it's always relative, but it's good to have a sort of ballpark range. Thank you very much.
And from, sorry, Alistair.
No,
so from the prison side, we tend to work with the lads that we pick up onto caseload for between 8 and 12 weeks, as Matt just said. So very similar there. But we've also got peer mentors that work with the prison team. And if whoever it is that's been taken onto caseload may need a little more consistency and a little more support and what have you, where it isn't, that don't need the as much. So the peer mentor would work with them at the moment. I think, Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at up to like 6 months.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And I've worked with people over the last few years who have done lived experience work, and as Earl says, I do something very similar where it's less intensive support and is around an activity, and we're just developing that at the moment to give more of our clients extra time after initial sort of crisis, as it were, around things to connect with social inclusion and vocational kind of activities and wellbeing activities.
Thanks very much. Our next question, are there any myths or misconceptions about the service? We often find people think services are one thing and then they're really not that, so it's good to sort of get the clear information out here. So any myths or misconceptions?
I think one of the main ones, I predominantly have been based in police custody, and I think one of the main kind of misunderstandings is that we have a mental health team. So it's just to be really clear that although, like I mentioned earlier, although we're employed for a mental health trust, we are not a mental health team. So we don't do kind of like any treatment. It's about kind of liaising and linking individuals and offering that support to access the appropriate services in the community. So just to be really aware that if you have patients that clients that have mental health crisis and you want to make us aware of them, that's fine, and we can kind of liaise with the relevant crisis support. However, that we wouldn't hold that solely ourselves. We aren't a treatment service, so just to make that kind of really clear, because it's definitely a misconception in police custody. So we are vulnerability services, so it kind of extends it to the wider population. Probably everyone that comes through custody could probably, in theory, be referred to us for some level of support, because there will be some vulnerability there. And I suppose the other one, just to be really clear about, is that possibly a bit more of a negative one, is that people think it's a get out of jail card.
Yeah.
And it's just to be really clear that that's not what we're aiming to as a service. It's about making sure that individuals that come into contact are as supported as they possibly can be to be able to go through that process effectively. And that is a benefit for the individual obviously involved, to make sure that if they have got needs, they're being identified and support is being put in place to help them navigate that system. But also a benefit and an advantage for kind of like the criminal justice system, that it's making sure that individuals have got that access to a fair trial, a fair kind of shot at justice, really.
And it's interesting with that, Jess, isn't it, around the get out of jail?
Yeah.
Not quite the phrase, but actually we've seen lots of clients who have engaged really well, made incredible efforts on their own behalf, and actually when it's come to sentencing down the line a little bit, actually those efforts and engagement with services, including our own, have probably kept quite a number of people out of jail when it's been, you know, when the sentences is borderline.
And it is a really kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of comment, that, and I think it's just that kind of misconception that people are trying to kind of evade the criminal justice system. And it's just to be really clear that that's not it. It's about identifying vulnerabilities, and if appropriate, so if someone is acutely unwell, diverting them away to get that appropriate treatment. But it's about a support network and ensuring that individuals are supported to go through the process as effectively as they can. So it's just about making sure that we're supporting where we can do, really.
And I'll just concur with what Jess just said, because in prison, I probably get it virtually every time that we go into the prison, that somebody will see our lanyards and think that we're part of the mental health services within the prison. And it's really important that our practitioners, although some of them do come from the mental health nursing background and wherever, they don't identify themselves as mental health nurses. They identify as a L&D practitioner.
Yeah, definitely.
I think another one a little bit in the community is around, you know, I think sometimes people think we're connected with the police or part of the police as well. So it's breaking that down. But I won't say what my car is, but apparently my car is sometimes used as an unmarked one. It doesn't help at all on the community visits as people look out the window. But we soon, you know, obviously break that down. And actually people have said, lots of people say that it's absolutely fantastic that there are people other than the police down at custody. Do you know what I mean? To offer something completely different, and I think people can feel more reassured there as well.
Okay, thank you. This question can require a bit of thinking time. Hopefully it'll be all right. Is there an example client you can give, if you think of, you know, someone specific, but obviously keeping things confidential, that would give us a sense of their sort of support journey of, you know, I know everything's relative, but a sort of average way you would be delivering support to someone that you could describe to us?
Yeah, I can have a go at a chap that I've actually just taken on to do some of the social inclusion work, Alistair, that after one of my colleagues did some really good work with this guy. And actually it highlights a few things that we've talked about, but also including that we can take referrals from, which is an important point, from our colleagues in different parts of the country. So if something happens to somebody down in London and they're actually live in Birmingham, there's some good communication networks. We can take on the community support when somebody's back in the area. So this was a chap who is from the north of England. He's received a short prison sentence in the past, relatively recently. He got rearrested. It's probably about 6 months ago for quite sort of serious harassment against a family member. So he was arrested. He couldn't live in that area, although that's where all his social networks are in this northern city. So he came back to Birmingham where he lived previously. So we got, I think, it's not usually that long, but it's quite complex around his kind of like diagnoses and his needs. I think we got about 5 or 6 page report. So he's very vulnerable, coming back to Birmingham again, living in a shared housing, vulnerable housing. So this gentleman is on the autistic spectrum. He's also received diagnoses at various times of dissocial personality disorder and psychotic disorder. The only thing is his medication was in line, or wider mental health support was really lined up very well at that point. He was very sort of critical of the services in the north. So some of his needs included registering with a GP, connecting up with the community mental health team in Birmingham, supporting him around very low income at the time. I think this includes travel backwards and forwards, do you know what I mean, connect with court cases and, earlier seeing his family. Basically, a lot of that's been done by my colleague Andy, who did a wonderful job connecting with this guy and really building. An important thing to say as well, and I guess it's in the wider No Wrong Door network, in that we do a lot of practical things, but quite often it's that sort of sometimes unspoken sort of emotional support around everything, relationship building. This client, do you know what I mean, clearly had a very difficult traumatic time, and also maybe he's around his autism. When I first met him as well, it's sort of quite a big jump for him to go and connect with other people. But he got a community sentence. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, he might quite easily have got a custodial sentence for the offence, but because of the way he connected, we're also authorised to write court reports on someone's current circumstances. So this guy worked for about 5 months with my colleague Andy, and Andy could wrote a very favourable in many ways court report describing about his vulnerabilities, difficulties, past history, his current engagement with the services. So he had to go up to back up north to for the court case, and he received a community sentence. He's come back down. We decided that he'd benefit from this extra time that we're providing for some clients, and now he's connected up with 1 or 2 wellbeing activities, including Straight and Narrow, which is run by a colleague of ours, Chad Hoban. He went to Fircroft a couple of weeks ago for an open day there, and he's just helping as well us in a number of ways. We're developing some training on multiple vulnerabilities, working with people with multiple vulnerabilities and support, and his insight is proving really valuable as well for that. So and I think he feels he's got a bit of a pathway. He's again working with somebody who works in a similar way to how he was used to with my colleague Andy. So, but despite that, he's having 1 or 2 crises still. There was one over money and some money coming out of his bank account from an ex-partner a couple of weeks ago that we were able to sort of support, almost like in a sense intervening early with that before he might have gone off and done something that he'd have regretted, and we got a bit of a short-term emergency plan for that.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry to cut you off. I'm just aware we've got one more question, then I want to get into the QA session to make sure everyone has the chance to ask their questions as well. So if either of you could answer this one as briefly as possible. Sorry to sound rude, but I just want to make sure we can get in the QA. Were there any changes to the service through the pandemic that have now been sustained, or are things back to normal, quote unquote, for you guys?
What we did is we just, I think at the start of the pandemic, as far as the community team went, we thought we're not going to be able to run a service to begin with. Probably everyone thought that and sort of panicked. And then we looked at what we could do. We could still meet people outside and find quiet places. We could still people move house. Like people couldn't come in the car, so we might move people's stuff safely. So I think really we adapted was the main thing.
And of any of those adaptations, have they kept going, or are things back as they were now?
I think they're not quite the same as they were in terms of being able to take people in cars so much. And I think the court office is just opening up. They've done a lot. The courts have done a lot by phone, which suits some people, doesn't suit other clients. And the custody team's always been there, which is, fantastic. They've been able to do that. So we kind of like sort of just about getting there. But I think the adaptations, we've kept quite a few of them because they're things which are of long-term benefit to clients.
Perfect. Thanks very much.